My name is Gray. This happened 6 years ago when my girlfriend and I were both 19. One evening, she texted me asking for a big favor. Her parents were out for the night, and she was buried under a mountain of homework. She asked if I could take her 10-year-old brother, Dean, to the local baseball field for his night game and bring him home afterward. Dean and I got along great, so I said yes right away. I picked him up a little early so we could make it before the game started at 7. The baseball field was in a very isolated spot. You had to park your car in an open dirt lot and then walk for about 5 minutes down a trail through a thick forest to reach the field. During the day, the path was fine, but at night, it was a completely different story. The game lasted much longer than expected because it went into extra innings. By the time it ended, the sky was pitch black. Most families had already headed home, and only a few people were left. Dean had to stay behind for a few minutes to talk to his coach about next week's practice schedule, so we were the very last ones to leave the field. Suddenly, the stadium lights shut off on an automatic timer. Everything around us was swallowed by thick, heavy darkness. We started walking onto the forest trail. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. Dean walked right next to me, but he was unusually quiet. He was usually a very talkative kid, but right now, he didn't say a single word. About halfway down the path, Dean suddenly stopped. He squeezed my arm hard and pointed ahead. "Gray, do you see that?" he whispered. I squinted my eyes to see. Even though it was dark, I could make out a tall, thin figure standing perfectly still in the middle of the trail. The person stood there like a wooden statue. Then, with a sudden and eerily smooth movement, the shadow slipped into the bushes on the left side. My heart skipped a beat. To keep Dean from panicking, I pretended I didn't see anything. "It's nothing. You're just seeing things. Let's keep moving," I said. We kept walking, but I swear I heard the sound of leaves rustling right beside us. It wasn't the wind. It was the sound of someone moving through the brush, keeping pace with us. I gripped Dean's hand and told him to walk faster. Finally, we made it out to the parking lot. But when I reached into my pocket, my heart dropped. I realized I had lost my keys. I searched every single pocket, but the keys were gone. I must have dropped them in the bleachers. I thought about going back to look for them, but the idea of leaving Dean alone in the middle of a dark parking lot terrified me. While I was hesitating, Dean grabbed my sleeve. He pointed a shaking finger toward the trail, his voice breaking. "Gray, look." I turned around. Under the faint glow of my phone light at the edge of the path, that man was standing there, staring right at us. He wasn't hiding anymore. He stood there, blocking the only path back to the baseball field. "It will be faster to walk home. It's only about 15 minutes. We'll stay on the streets with lights," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We started walking along the main road. I held Dean's hand tight. We walked very fast, but I tried not to run. I knew that in the dark, running might trigger a predator's instinct to chase. I glanced back. The man was still standing there, motionless. When I looked back a second time, he had started moving. He was following us, keeping a steady distance behind. Under the bright orange glow of the streetlights, I could see him clearly. He was very tall, very thin, and he was fiddling with something metal in his hand. The light reflected off a long, sharp knife blade. I squeezed Dean's hand tighter, my heart racing. Suddenly, the man started making strange noises. It wasn't a scream. It was a series of choked, trembling moans like an injured animal. The sound grew louder and more frantic. "Gray," Dean whispered, his voice shaking violently. "Keep walking fast, but don't run," I said. I was panicking inside, but I had to stay calm for him. We sped up, and so did he. The distance between us didn't change. His moaning became louder and more crazed. As we turned onto the final stretch of road toward my girlfriend's house, we heard heavy footsteps behind us. He was charging at us at full speed. "Run!" I yelled. We ran for our lives. The footsteps were getting closer. The moaning had turned into a wild growl. I didn't dare look back for even a second. My girlfriend's house was right in front of us. We jumped onto the sidewalk and dove into the bushes next to the front door. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking so hard I could barely type. I texted her, "Open the door now! Emergency!" The footsteps stopped at the end of the driveway. I hid behind the bushes, hugging Dean close and putting my hand over his mouth to keep him quiet. Through the leaves, I saw the man standing in the middle of the street. He was turning his head back and forth, searching for us. The streetlight showed his face. He was pale, his eyes were wide and bulging, and his mouth was hanging open as he continued to moan. The front door swung open and light poured out. Dean and I bolted from the bushes and scrambled up the porch steps. I slammed the door shut and turned all 3 locks. My girlfriend stood there, looking completely confused until she saw the sheer terror on our faces. "Call the police," I gasped, breathless from exhaustion. Looking out the window, the man was still in the middle of the street. He was pacing in circles, moaning and still clutching the knife. He even started frantically kicking over the neighbors' trash cans. The police arrived quickly, but the man had already disappeared into the shadows of the neighborhood. They searched the area but found no trace of him. They took our statements and promised to patrol the area more often. The next morning, I went back to the baseball field with a few friends. We found my keys wedged in a gap between the wooden boards of the bleachers. As I held the cold metal keys in my hand, a horrifying thought hit me. If I had actually had my keys last night and tried to unlock the car, he might have attacked me while I was distracted at the door. Or worse, he might have been waiting in the back seat. To this day, I still don't know who that man was or what he wanted. But whenever I remember the sound of him chasing us, my heart still pounds with that same paralyzing fear.